All right, guys, stocks have been on an epic run, and obviously, Nvidia just had another great earnings call. And so now all the crazy calls about Nvidia going to all these crazy price targets are popping up, and this guy says it's going to $600 per share. So let's jump in and see exactly what it's talking about. Let's separate the truth from the hype. You guys know that's exactly what you get here at this channel. So make sure you like the video if you like getting the truth out of the hype, because that's exactly what you're going to get today. All right, so you guys know we're going to look at this from the same angle we always do. We're going to look at fundamentals, valuation, all those things like that to see if this guy's actually full of it or if he's actually onto something here, which if you don't understand how to do evaluation and you want to see buy alerts on Palantir, for example, just this year at around the $20 range, or SoFi down in the 6s and 7s, and Tesla down in the 100s, and a ton more, and see my complete watch list, everything. The Black Friday sale is live for my group. Make sure you check out the pinned comment down there and see if a membership's right for you. That's where you get all that information. That's exactly what you missed out on this year by not being a member, so make sure you jump on those spots. Again, it's the biggest discount ever for my group, so make sure you check out the pinned comment down there. And yes, Nvidia has also made a lot of folks a lot of money. But did you know you only need $300,000 to retire, and you can retire as quick as 1 to 3 years using the Blacklist program, which the founder spots just went live, where you get lifetime access, guys. It's not like my other group where you got to pay monthly in order to be in there, or pay annually. You get one time, you pay once, you get lifetime access in there. If you want to take advantage of that and be able to retire as quickly as that, I'll show you exactly how to retire on as little as $300 and as quick as 1 to 3 years. So make sure you check out the pinned comment down there for that as well, because when those founder spots get all taken up, unfortunately, got to move to a different pricing model. That's just for founders only, so make sure you get your spot. Okay, so let's jump into the video here and let's see if this guy is accurate or if he's just full of you know what.
Welcome back to Morning Trade Live. It's time to go inside out on Nvidia earnings. Nvidia just hitting new record highs. And wait till you hear my next guest's prediction. Joining me right now, Phil Panaro, founder and former CEO of BCG Plantinian. It's great to see you.
Nicole, thank you for having me.
Welcome. $800 by 2030. See, you say it so I can hear it.
Yes, I believe Nvidia will hit 800 by 2030. I look at things from a long-term perspective and from a technology perspective. But just based on the numbers that were released today, solidify that view. And I'll give you an example. And I think,
okay, so let's start right there with exactly what he said. $800 by 2030. Unfortunately, you guys know my feelings on this if you've been watching this channel for any length of time. When you start giving price projections out to 2030, 2040, 2050, whatever the case is, you are purely speculating at that stage. I'm sorry, that's the unfortunate truth with investing. So taking a long-term perspective, although I agree with the premise that I hold stocks long-term, like I plan on holding Tesla and Palantir and all those for the next 5, 10 years, 20 years, hopefully, you know, for the rest of my life or until I need that money. That's what I hope to do with those particular assets. However, what I don't do is I don't make projections out until 2030, 2040, 2050, whatever the case is, because it's absolutely speculation at that stage. Anything beyond a year or two gets really, really murky. You might, in certain industries, certain sectors, certain other things of that nature, you might be able to look out 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. If you're lucky, if it's a really boring business that just kind of clicks on, it's a consumer staple, you know, something that just everybody needs all the time, whatever the case is. But beyond that, you are purely speculating, especially in something like tech where it moves so fast. Regulation moves fast relative to other regulation. Everything else changes all the time, you know, to where there's a lot of different things that could just all of a sudden Nvidia could be twice that amount. That wouldn't surprise me. Or it could be, you know, all the way where it is right now in that same time frame as well. That wouldn't surprise me either, because we've seen that in tech repeatedly over time in regards to, you know, huge run-ups out of nowhere, huge, you know, drawdowns out of nowhere, companies that were the leader and thought could never be toppled. All of a sudden, they're just the laggard. It's right here, just specifically with chips, you know, Intel was the king forever. Now they're, I mean, what are they? They're definitely not Nvidia for sure. You know, so you kind of get into these different stretches to where trying to guess tech out that far is pure speculation and absolutely not worth your time. So you got to be very, very careful when you're doing that, even if he makes a good case here for it, because you're purely speculating at that stage.
I'll talk about the numbers once, and then we'll move on to how the technology drives the numbers. So today, they've reported $35 billion in one quarter, which is 3 months. They had a total of 27 billion over 12 months last year.
Right.
So that means in 3 months, they exceeded their entire 2023 earnings by $8 billion. I'm not sure there's a stock in the history of the exchange that has driven that much in billions in revenue, while also achieving 50% margins. So
I don't know if that's true or not, but I can't argue with that sort of performance. Is just ridiculous. 100% agree there. Not going to debate that whatsoever. That is a ridiculous performance from a company that is just crushing it and definitely clicking on all cylinders. So no disagreement so far in this particular part of the discussion.
do the math on that, 35 a quarter, they're already at a 140 clip in terms of revenue. And in order to achieve the prediction of 800 by 2030, they need to be at 600 billion in revenue. So we're right on target.
And look, I mean, you had Jensen Huang talking about the demand.
And there's kind of the flaw right there when you start to extrapolate out. And I go back to Tesla in 2021 when everybody was at $400 and everybody was making all these crazy projections because they were assuming that Tesla was just going to grow at 50% forever, infinitely. Margins were going to continue to get better infinitely. All these things were all just going to continue in the future completely unhampered. And I just thought, well, I don't believe that. That's not the proper way to invest. And more importantly, that's never what happens over a 10-year time span. It just doesn't happen. All these things come up that you can't control that are outside the control of Tesla in that case. And obviously things will pop up that will be outside the control of Nvidia as well as we move forward. So when you start doing those type things and you start saying, see, now you can kind of see how I can get there. Yeah, I can play that same game too with every single stock. But the reality is you're wrong on that far more than you're right because you are just speculating because too many things are out of your control that you can't control regulation. You can't control the macro. You can't control what goes on with all the different geopolitical things all around the world. You can't control what your competitors are doing. You can't control that new startup or just a change in technology all the way around that just completely shifts the business to where you were the king of the hill. Now all of a sudden, everybody wants this shiny object over here. And, the money goes away very, very quickly. It happens all the time in tech. You see it repeatedly. Now, I'm not saying Nvidia can't pivot. I'm not saying they can't navigate those waters. But what he's using is right now, today, this is what they're doing. So therefore, I'm going to extrapolate that out for the next, 5-6 years. And they're just going to continue right on doing that. And the demand's going to be the same. And everything else is going to continue to grow at the same exact clip or better. And that's just simply not how investing works.
Incredible, more and more demand for the Blackwell chips, and those are already out in the hands of some of the companies and being integrated and everything. The big picture here seems pretty strong overall. You talk about the technology of it, and you're spinning it even into the government.
Yeah.
A way that maybe we didn't talk about this.
Yes. So let's talk about the 3 drivers for Nvidia and why I'm so bullish on it. The first driver is the AI revolution, which everybody talks about. And the penetration right now on AI is literally less than 1%. So that's important to take into consideration based on the performance they've already achieved. The second, which nobody talks about, is the transition from Web 2 to Web 3. Yeah. Morgan Stanley, Goldman, and Citibank have all given estimates of that from 8 to 12 trillion dollars by 2030. 8 to 12. So we'll use the midpoint, which is 10 trillion. Right now, there's less than 1 trillion spent on Web 3.0, which means it has an opportunity to grow 10 times more. So that's why where the stock is now, which is around 140, going to 600, is actually a very conservative prediction. But there's a new thing that came up based on your question, which was the government.
Well, let's think about that for a second here, assuming again that Nvidia is going to eat up as much of that future market share as they currently are right now. That'd be great. Obviously, Nvidia shareholders would be very, very happy. But again, that is pure speculation. We don't know. We don't even know what's going to be involved in Web 3.0 and exactly what other changes are going to come that continue to accelerate that growth into it. Again, this is just kind of where a lot of these sort of arguments kind of fall apart for me personally as I'm kind of listening to it because it is just pure speculation at this stage. Now, however, he's getting ready to talk about government here. That's an interesting side piece that I definitely think has more tangible, or could have more tangible results than some of the other speculation he's made so far.
And Vivek started the Department of Government Efficiency, which is looking at how you cut waste from the government. Now, they call this the second Manhattan Project, and nobody's spoken about this. The first Manhattan Project is when they created the atomic bomb, which has changed the way wars are fought, and it was a game changer. They call this the second Manhattan Project. And
I'd like to know who they is, because I've never heard of it. So I don't know who they is calling it the second man. I don't know. I don't know. Just one of those things. I'm kind of curious as to where sometimes they, is this kind of like, I don't know, the next Apple, the next, I don't know, whatever, the next internet, uh, whatever the case is, the next industrial revolution. Yeah. Okay.
reason why, if they do it right, is they're going to reinvent how government is managed and delivered. And I want to give specific examples. The federal government has over 300,000 buildings. They're the largest building owner in the US. You can take all of those buildings and you can build digital twins for them, and you can operate and maintain them off your phone using AI. In addition to that, all the government infrastructure you can build digital twins for, and you can actually drive those through AI, and the cost will come down tremendously. And to give you an example,
Yeah, I like the idea. This is, again, pure speculation at this stage. Anybody who has ever worked with the government understands they are not efficient. There are all kinds of other contracts and other things in place in other government systems that have contracts. There are other government contracts in place that are very long, government systems, government, everything else. There's all kinds of laws around a lot of the different things that you've got to do in order to be able to effectively change the complete infrastructure, much less create a digital blueprint of all the different buildings out there. All the different agencies all have their own contracts. This is coming from a place where this guy clearly has not looked at what would actually be entailed in that and how many years it would take to unwind one and then rewind another one there. We're probably talking decades at this stage, because it's not like there's one government system and one government everything that runs everything. It's kind of like going down to your DMV, and the DMV is different state to state to state. It's kind of the same exact way in regards to the government in terms of tracking and everything else like that. So there's pretty much no chance that you could just create something like that out of nowhere or in any sort of reasonable time frame to get that sort of infrastructure in place in order to do this in the first place. Just working through all the different contracts and everything else. And no, oh, by the way, we're not even talking about the cost to do all that sort of stuff. And it's not like our government doesn't already have budget issues. They have massive budget issues. And, obviously Elon and Vivek and the other guys are going to be tasked with creating more government efficiency, which I'm not sure how much Congress is going to be willing to just fund hundreds of billions, if not more than that, in terms of infrastructure needs that will take decades really to play out, if they even work, if all the other things happen in regards to that. I'm not saying we don't necessarily need that sort of overhaul, but is there an appetite there for that large of a budget, that large of a change? And I don't even know legally in regards to what do you do with all those other contracts that are out there. There's just a lot of hoops, and especially with the situation with our budget being so large already, I don't know if you would actually be able to get something in place to make a big enough dent for or to be able to fund a project like this particular project. But hey, let's see what else he's got here.
because people talk about, is AI have a value? And I've never talked about this on the show, but I actually built the market surveillance system that drives the NASDAQ market, catches people for insider trading, trade reporting. It used to take 4 months to catch somebody who were doing something illegal. We delivered the system. It takes 1 minute. So if you want to talk about how that will affect government manpower and services, there's your best
And
example.
efficiency.
Yes.
In a big way.
Yeah, one's a private company, one's the government. Kind of conveniently left out that part in terms of complexity, the ability to execute, no federal employees and all kinds of other pensions and all kinds of other things all involved. Obviously, they have specific rights as federal employees and things of that nature. It becomes a much harder task than the task that he had there trying to catch insider trading, at the exchange. I don't think that's really comparing apples to apples there at all.
Without a doubt. It's unbelievable what you're talking about. The question is whether or not Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy can actually get this done in, the period of time that they have.
Well, let's take it piece by
you're
piece.
talking about, reinventing, you talked about the atomic bomb as the first Manhattan Project and this being the second. How quickly can this happen?
So let's take this piece by piece. So the Biden administration actually put AI heads for each of the top agencies, and I actually met with the head of HUD, and we discussed digitalization of all their assets. So you couldn't have a better person in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency than Elon Musk, because he's the godfather of autonomous cars, which is a cognitive car. So what I'm talking about is autonomous buildings, autonomous bridges, and so on, and all the infrastructure. So you couldn't have a better person in charge. And just so you know,
how long... You think it can happen?
I absolutely think it can happen. It's all about implementation.
Yeah, and Nvidia will...
All right, so I'm not going to disagree if you're going to do government efficiency. Obviously, having Elon in charge of that is great. She absolutely made excellent points. How in the world are you going to do this in a 4-year period? How are you going to turn around this, really multi-trillion-dollar ship that is the U.S. government and get all the things in place? And immediately he jumped to nothing. He didn't answer the question. Exactly how are you going to do that in that short of a time frame? So that's kind of the first piece there. The second piece is when you're looking at this, you're talking about the atomic bomb where we had no government regulation. The government was very, very small. They were very, very agile at the time. Obviously, we were racing in the middle of a world war, where all the money was, there was no such thing as funding issues. There was no such thing as bureaucratic, all the red tape, all the other stuff that we have today didn't exist back then. So of course you could push the Manhattan Project all the way through. They were not trying to recreate the entire government. They were trying to create something new all off on their own, and all they needed was money. And obviously, resources. Hey, give us this guy, give us that guy, give us more money to bring this company and that company in. That was what they needed, and that was kind of like a blank check. This is totally different. This is unwinding something that is really what? 60, 70, 80 years in the making that you need to unwind and then rewind something new. Cool. You can put a figurehead for AI at the top of every single government agency out there, and they still all have the same exact issues. Okay, I got this old IT system. I got, 25 of them. None of them talk. None of them work together. Ask anybody who works for the government. They can tell you that. And yeah, they're just going to come right in and go, hey, AI fixes it. And that's just not how it works. In regards to, and that's one department, much less the entire thing. So although I think they can definitely make strides and maybe get us moving in the right direction, but he's talking about autonomous buildings and all of a sudden I'm thinking the cost alone makes that impossible. It's cost prohibitive now. Now, maybe in the future it's not. Maybe we lay some of the groundwork for some of these things to happen in the future. But, it's kind of one of these deals to where, wow, all of a sudden in 4 years, we're just going to have a transformed government. I don't believe that's going to be the case. I hope that it is, because obviously we could definitely stand for our government to get a lot more efficiency. Do I think they can make strides? Absolutely. But when you start talking about changing infrastructures of entire government systems that have hundreds and hundreds of systems and all these other things, it is a giant task that will take decades, if I had to guess, or at least a decade in order to do. And that's if you have the appetite to fund it as a government. And I don't know if we do or not have that sort of appetite to fund it to that level in order to get it to happen. So comparing it to the Manhattan Project is honestly laughable. You couldn't put a worse example there, because there's not a single piece of that situation that is anywhere close to the same outside of having some super smart people on the problem. Hey, that's great. But every other variable there is the total opposite and makes it a completely different scenario altogether.
And Nvidia will be a beneficiary.
So let's talk about
let's talk about, when you talk about the AI revolution, what names will benefit?
So this is really important for people to understand. We had a CPU-dominated environment for like the last 60 years. CPU is single processing.
Yep.
Nvidia builds GPUs. In order to drive AI, you need GPU. So think about the opportunity from a revenue standpoint. They've only penetrated around 1%, and they have 40% of their revenue coming from the hyperscalers, which leaves 495 companies that haven't engaged in AI, which leaves hundreds of cities and 100 governments worldwide. And all of them will be engaging NVIDIA. Know why? Because in order to drive AI, you need GPUs.
Yeah, so NVIDIA is it sounds like. What about all the others? When we think of AMD and Taiwan Semi, and do they benefit too, or not really?
So this is important for people to understand, because this is a question I get all the time. They're like, well, there's other chip players out there, and they may have cheaper chips.
Intel.
It's not just the chip. So NVIDIA provides the chip, the programming language, which is CUDA, the networking, and the most important thing, which nobody talks about, which is Omniverse, which is digital twins. So in order to do all that autonomous, to make it work you actually have embedded AI. And you need all of those things. Also, the people who have been trained on AI, they've all been trained in CUDA. So they created like a moat.
In this language.
They created a moat around the castle.
All right, we have to go, but.
All right, so we'll go ahead and stop the video right there. Clear the guys Nvidia bull. Nobody else is going to be there. Nobody else is going to take any market share. All that sort of stuff like that. Yeah, that's generally when you should put up your guard a little bit whenever you hear something like that. Now, when I say something like that, I am not bearish on Nvidia. I 100% believe that they are not only the largest player, they're keeping their foot on the gas. But especially when you start talking about the idea of one company dominating all is silly talk. It just doesn't happen especially as you start to get to scale there. What I mean by that is especially government contracts, there are conditions and a lot of other things that have to be met in order to receive those contracts. And of course, each branch of the government, each piece of the government, they're all going to look and have different needs, have different budgets, and may or may not be able to play into NVIDIA's wheelhouse, period. So that's kind of the first piece. You're also negating the fact that, hey, your competitors, NVIDIA's competitors, are also, actively working on some of the same type things that I'm not saying theirs is as good as NVIDIA's or I'm not going that route, but you may not need as good as NVIDIA in order for the system that you want designed to do what you want to do. And so there's all kinds of other things that work into this. This was the same argument that was being made with Tesla back in the day. It's going to be Tesla. I remember distinctly, there were folks right here on YouTube making predictions that by 2030, no cars on the road are going to be any other brand except for Tesla. No cars. Gas cars are all going to be gone. They're all going to be Teslas. And some of the more ridiculous people were making maybe 2027, maybe 2028. Well, here we are, and we're nowhere near that mark. And I said from the start, there's going to be multiple winners. Now, that doesn't mean that, it's only Ford and GM. No, that included Chinese automakers and everybody else. Guess what? There's a lot of really competitive EV companies out there doing a lot of great things. Elon has acknowledged that as well. Elon also was not the person saying that. But this guy sounds like a lot of those folks where it's just like, no, it's going to be all this. Nobody's there. Nobody can compete. Nobody can catch up. And in certain segments, that may be true. But again, as things change, as things evolve, that's a very, very dangerous proposition to have. Now, that does not mean I think NVIDIA is going to go in the toilet or anything like that. Absolutely not. Great company. This has been one of the best stretches, not just in terms of earnings, but in terms of execution by a company and by a management team I've seen in a long, long time. And I've been doing this 25 plus years. So I would agree there completely. I am not doubting NVIDIA whatsoever. I would not be surprised if NVIDIA hit $800 per share in the future. It would not surprise me. However, I want you guys to understand how long-term buy and hold fundamental investors work. That is speculation. That to project out that far. I'm worried about what's the valuation today, and do I believe this company will perform in the future? If they happen to perform to $300 and you happen to buy it today, and they hit $300 per share, a few years from now, I think you're a pretty happy shareholder. You got to double up in a stock. Again, if you get more than 12% a year in the market, that's an incredible gain in a stock in regards to the stock market there. You were beating the market at that stage. We have group members that are up, 100%, 150% just this year. Just my portfolio challenge thing is up over 80% just this year. And I hadn't been doing it full year. It's only like 7 months old or something of that nature. So there is all kinds of gains to be made where you can beat the market. But I don't need the 5x on top of 5x on top of 5x in short periods of time, every 5 years, basically doubling up every year, in order for me to be a very happy shareholder and make a lot of money in the stock. Now, if that happens to happen, awesome. Congratulations to all you shareholders out there. But I wouldn't bank on that and make a decision based upon that. I would make my decision based upon valuation. So that way you're always safe in regards to your buys. That's how I built out my Palantir position, plus all my bonus shares. It's how I built out my Tesla position, plus all the bonus shares. Same thing with SoFi, same thing with Google and Amazon, and even goofy stocks like JP Morgan. All kinds of stocks like that we've doubled up, tripled up on, 5x'd on, or more in some cases. That all happened just by being prudent, sticking with valuation, ignoring projections out to 2030, and just going, hey, how's the business performing right now? What's the valuation look like? Hey, we're getting shares pretty cheap here. Let's buy more shares, or let's go ahead and fill out our position so we don't have to worry about whenever it runs, like Palantir's run this year. Hey, great. I was set for the run whenever. I didn't know when it was coming. Nobody else did either. I bought when it was undervalued. And hey, right now, sure, it's trading really rich. That's okay. I'm happy because I have all the shares I want, plus bonus shares, plus bonus shares, plus bonus shares, and a lot of you guys too. So I just kind of want you to keep that in mind, is don't make the decision based upon this guy's projection out to 2030. It is pure speculation. If it happens to happen, great. It may happen earlier than that. That's possible too. But you want to base your decision today on Nvidia based upon the valuation of the stock itself. And then at that stage, you can look at filling out your position and then look out the next couple of years, and you can make a pretty reasonable assumption within that time frame. But you start getting beyond 2 years, just understand that you're purely speculating. And if you want to learn exactly how to do that, make sure you take advantage of the Black Friday sale that's live now for the biggest discount ever for my group. And make sure you jump onto the blacklist as well, where those founder spots are available. You want to be financially free in 1 to 3 years on as little as $300,000. That program takes you step by step how to execute to all that. And I'll be right there with you, walking right alongside you to help you along the way to get yourself there. So make sure you check out the pinned comment for those, because when those spots fill up and when the Black Friday sale ends for my group, those discounts go away. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market. And click here to see my exact plan for this market. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.